If you think reaching $100,000 means you're only 10% of the way to a million, your math is linear, and the market is exponential. Look, I get it. We're taught from kindergarten that 100,000 is 1/10 of a million. It's basic arithmetic. If you have 10 apples and you eat one, you have 90% left. But the stock market? The market doesn't care about your third-grade math. The market cares about momentum. The reality, the weird, counterintuitive, slightly mind-bending reality, is that once you hit that first six-figure milestone, you aren't just 10% of the way there. In terms of time and effort, you are effectively 1/3 of the way to being a millionaire. Welcome back to Lou's Logic. I'm Lou, and I spend way too much time thinking about compound interest so you don't have to. Today, we're breaking down the first $100,000 rule, because if you can wrap your head around this, the way you look at your bank account, your job, and your future is going to shift forever. Here's the thing that most financial gurus won't tell you, because it's not sexy for a thumbnail. The beginning of your financial journey absolutely sucks. It feels like you're pushing a massive, jagged limestone boulder up a 45-degree incline. You're sweating, your muscles are screaming, and when you look down at your feet, it feels like you've barely moved an inch. Let's look at the numbers, because the numbers don't have emotions. Let's say you're starting from zero. You've decided to get serious. You're putting away $100 every single week. That's about $433 a month. You're disciplined, you're consistent, and you're invested in a solid index fund returning an average of 8% a year. How long does it take to hit that first $100,000? 12 years. 12 years. Think about that for a second. That is over a decade of saying no to the fancy vacations, no to the brand new car lease, and no to the expensive dinners. It is 624 weeks of consistency. But here's the kicker, and this is the part that makes people quit. At the end of those 12 years, when you finally see that $100,000 balance in your brokerage account, you'll realize that $62,000 of that was your own heavy lifting. That was your cold, hard cash that you worked for, taxed at the source, and manually transferred. Only about $38,000 of that total is actual market growth. In those first 12 years, you are doing 60% of the work. Your money is basically a lazy teenager sitting on the couch, barely helping out with the chores. It's discouraging. You look at the wealth you've built and think, I worked 12 years for this? At this rate, I'll be 150 years old before I can retire. But that's because you're thinking linearly. You're looking at the hill, not the snowball. Here's where it gets interesting. Actually, interesting is an understatement. This is where the math starts to look like a magic trick. You've hit $100,000. You're tired, but you keep going. You keep contributing that same $100 a week. How long do you think it takes to get to the next milestone, to go from $100,000 to $200,000? If the first 100K took 12 years, linear logic says the next 100K should take another 12 years, right? Wrong. It takes only 6 more years. Read that again. It took you 12 years to build the first story of the house, and then you built the second story in half the time. Why? Because the boulder has reached the top of the hill. It's starting to roll down the other side. At this $200,000 mark, something foundational shifts. For the first time, your money is officially working harder than you are. Of that $200,000 total, you've contributed about $94,000 in total cash over 18 years. But the market? The market has handed you $106,000 in growth. You are now the minority shareholder in your own wealth. Your money has taken the lead. This is the knowing smirk moment for seasoned investors. We know that the first 100K is a dogfight. It's a test of will. Charlie Munger, the late great partner of Warren Buffett, famously said, I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. He wasn't being cruel. He just understood the physics of money. He knew that $100,000 is the escape velocity point. It's the moment the gravity of poverty and paycheck-to-paycheck living starts to lose its grip on you. Now, let's fast forward the tape. You stay the course, you don't touch the principal, you don't reward yourself by draining the account for a midlife crisis boat, you just let it ride. 36 years into this journey, using that same $100 a week, you hit the big one, the 2 comma club, $1 million. Now let's look at the anatomy of that $1 million. Over those 36 years, you contributed a total of about $187,000 of your own money. That's it. The rest, over $813,000, is pure, unadulterated growth. Think about that. Over 80% of your wealth was generated while you were sleeping, while you were at your kids' soccer games, while you were drinking coffee, and while you were worrying about literally anything else. And here's the best part. The lifestyle part. At an 8% return, that $1 million portfolio is now generating $80,000 a year in growth. Remember how hard you worked to save $100 a week at the start? Now the account is growing by $1,500 a week without you lifting a finger. That is more than most people make at a full-time job, and your only job is to not get in the way. It sounds almost too good to be true, but it's just the inevitable conclusion of exponential growth. The problem isn't the math. The problem is the human brain. We aren't wired to understand this. We are wired to think that if we work twice as hard, we get twice the result. But in investing, you work 10 times harder at the start to get a result that feels like nothing, so that later you can do nothing and get a result that feels like everything. But let's get away from the spreadsheets for a second. Let's talk about how this feels, because money isn't just numbers, it's psychology. When you have $0 or even $5,000, you are in financial survival mode. You are playing defense. Every flat tire, every unexpected dental bill, every "we're doing a round of layoffs" rumor feels like a threat to your existence. You're stressed, you're reactive, and you're making decisions based on fear. When you hit $100,000, you move into playing offense. This is the identity shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who pays bills and start seeing yourself as an owner. You own a piece of the 500 largest companies in America. You own a slice of global productivity. There's a profound sense of quiet power that comes with a 6-figure brokerage account. It's not buy a Ferrari money, but it is a I can walk away from a toxic boss money. It's a I can take a 6-month sabbatical to figure out my next move money. When you have $100K, you realize that you are no longer a victim of the economy, you are a participant in it. You start to value time differently. You stop thinking, how much does this cost in dollars, and start thinking, how much does this cost in future compounding? You realize that a $500 unnecessary purchase today isn't just $500. It's the $5,000 that $500 would have become if you just left it alone for 30 years. It's empathetic to say that saving that first $100K is a grind. It is. It's a slog. It requires a level of delayed gratification that most of society is actively trying to talk you out of. Every advertisement you see is designed to keep you from hitting that $100K. Every buy now, pay later button is a trap to keep you in the heavy lifting phase forever. The system wants you to stay in the first 12 years of the grind. The system doesn't want you to reach the point where your money starts doing the work for you. So if the math is this clear, why isn't everyone a millionaire? The thing is, most people quit during the first 12 years phase. They get to year 5, they've saved $30,000, and they think, I've been sacrificing for 5 years and I'm not even close. This doesn't work. I might as well enjoy my life now. They don't realize they're just a few years away from the double. They don't realize they've already done the hardest part of the climb. It's like someone training for a marathon who quits at mile 6 because they're not at the finish line yet. They don't realize that the first 6 miles are the hardest on the lungs, and the last 6 are just about holding on to the momentum. Here's my advice. Ignore the finish line. Don't even look at the $1 million mark. Don't look at the mountain peak. Just look at the boulder. Your only job is to get that boulder to $100,000. Once you get it there, you can catch your breath. You can stand at the top of that first hill and look out at the view, because from 100K onwards, the wind is at your back, the incline levels out, and eventually the boulder starts rolling on its own. Look, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's worth it. The math of the first 100K is the closest thing we have to a cheat code in the real world. It turns the linear effort of your labor into the exponential power of the global economy. You have to decide which side of the math you want to be on. Do you want to be the person who works for money for 40 years? Or do you want to be the person who works for money for 12 years and then lets the money take over the shift? The time is going to pass anyway. 12 years from now, you're going to be 12 years older regardless of what you do with your $100 a week. 36 years from now, you'll either be sitting on $1 million snowball that's generating an $80,000 annual salary for doing nothing, or you'll be wondering what could have been if you just kept pushing that boulder a little bit longer. The math doesn't lie. The market is waiting. But I'm curious, what's the biggest hurdle for you right now? Is it the income side, or is it the staying consistent side? Let's talk about it in the comments. I'm Lou. This is Lou's Logic, and I'll see you in the next one.